What if Elon Musk actually pulls the plug on Crew Dragon? It sounds like it's in the distant future, but after Musk's recent bombshell statements, that possibility feels closer than ever. If that happened, it wouldn't just rattle SpaceX. It could leave NASA stranded, with its only ride to space hanging by a thread. But what if America's next great space vehicle isn't from SpaceX? Enter Dream Chaser, a sleek winged spaceplane that looks like a sci-fi shuttle and lands on runways like an airplane. It might just be the backup NASA desperately needs, and no one's been paying attention. In today's episode of TechMap, we're breaking down how Dream Chaser could be the ultimate alternative to Crew Dragon, why it may hold the key to NASA's future in orbit, and even the challenges ahead. Is this the dawn of a new space era, or just another dream chasing the stars? Space news has been absolutely on fire lately, but not because of a breakthrough mission or a new space race. This time it's all about Elon Musk throwing down the gauntlet to the Trump administration, threatening to decommission SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft. Crew Dragon is currently the vehicle NASA relies on to get astronauts and supplies to the ISS. SpaceX's CEO made the bold threat after President Trump floated the idea of cutting SpaceX's government contracts. Talk about a cosmic clash of titans. Hours later, Musk backtracked, saying, "Okay, we won't decommission Dragon." But the damage was done. This spat exposed just how much NASA depends on SpaceX, and how shaky things could get if Musk pulls the plug. Here's why this matters. Dragon isn't just a cool spaceship, it's the only U.S. spacecraft currently certified to carry astronauts to the ISS. Since 2020, it's been NASA's workhorse, ending a decade of depending on Russia's Soyuz after the space shuttle retired. Dragon also hauls cargo, and is even tasked with deorbiting the ISS by 2030. If Musk pulled Dragon, NASA would be in deep trouble. So, what are their options? Let's break it down. Enter Sierra Space's Dream Chaser, a winged, reusable spaceplane that looks like it flew straight out of a sci-fi movie. This beauty is designed to deliver cargo to the ISS, and there's even a crude version in the works. Space travel is heating up with this space plane, the spacecraft aiming to succeed NASA's retired space shuttle, and potentially outpace traditional capsule designs like SpaceX's Crew Dragon in the race to low Earth orbit. Inspired by the lifting body design's advantages over conventional capsules, the Sierra Space team pursued this innovative concept with big ambitions. Unlike capsules that splash down in the ocean or require special landing sites, Dream Chaser can touch down on public or commercial runways as short as 8,000 feet. That flexibility makes it compatible with a broad range of airports, both domestic and international. It uses parachutes and/or rocket engines for a soft landing. By contrast, Boeing's CST-100 generally lands on solid ground with parachutes, or in emergencies, splashes down in water. Landing anywhere other than a runway, like a grassy field, dirt strip, or body of water, comes with added complexity, requiring specialized training and preparation. Runways, on the other hand, are meticulously engineered with lights, markings, and navigational aids to support safe takeoffs and landings. Opting for these smooth, predictable surfaces helps mitigate many of the risks associated with rougher, unprepared landing zones. The result? Greater efficiency and spacecraft reusability. Dream Chaser can be turned around for another mission faster, and its runway landing makes it easy to immediately retrieve sensitive cargo or attend to medical emergencies. Research payloads can be whisked straight from the runway to facilities like the Space Station Processing Facility for analysis without delay. While SpaceX's Cargo Dragon 2 has sped up its return process, it still needs a recovery ship and helicopter transport, much slower than rolling off a runway into a hangar. Dream Chaser also boasts a gentler re-entry with its low-G descent profile, which reduces stress on both cargo and crew. That's crucial for transporting delicate scientific materials or medical supplies, and helps preserve the spacecraft's structure and heat shield. The craft's runway-ready design is complemented by non-toxic propellants and standardized systems, which eliminate the need for complicated recovery gear. Its ability to deorbit and land almost anywhere gives it unmatched versatility and opens the door for more international missions. Perhaps most importantly, Sierra Space is finishing its human-rated version of Dream Chaser. In the case of an in-flight medical emergency, its ability to land quickly on a standard runway could genuinely save lives. When it comes to cargo, SpaceX's Cargo Dragon 2 can haul up to 6 tons to the ISS and return 3 tons to Earth. Dream Chaser is built to deliver 5.5 tons to the ISS, but its advantage lies in its larger berthing port and more spacious cargo area. That means it can make better use of its payload capacity. Dragon 2, by contrast, has never launched with more than 60% of its full load due to volume limitations. That makes Dream Chaser potentially more cost-effective per mission for NASA. SpaceX still leads in thermal protection know-how, but Dream Chaser is catching up fast. Its new heat shield is lighter, stronger, and built to endure up to 1,650 degrees Celsius. The spacecraft is covered in about 2,000 thermal protection tiles that wrap around every curve and control surface. Each tile is custom-shaped to fit perfectly, averaging about 10 inches square, larger than those on Dragon, simplifying installation and reducing the total number required. That said, smaller, uniquely shaped tiles are still needed, where black and white sections meet, adding some complexity. The black and white tile combo isn't just for looks. White tiles help reflect solar heat in orbit, while black ones efficiently radiate heat during re-entry. It's a clever thermal strategy drawn from lessons learned during NASA's shuttle era. The tiles are attached using a high-temperature silicone adhesive that cures at room temperature, another innovation that builds on decades of experience. And while Dream Chaser can't compete with SpaceX's Starship in sheer size or payload, it holds a niche advantage: point-to-point travel on Earth. With no need for giant launch towers like Mechazilla, it offers a more flexible option for lighter payloads and specialized missions. In short, Dream Chaser may not be the biggest spacecraft in the game, but its unique design, versatility, and runway-ready reliability make it a serious contender in the future of space transportation. Sounds like a perfect backup, right? Well, not so fast. Dream Chaser's first cargo flight is set for late 2025 at the earliest, and it's hitching a ride on ULA's Vulcan Centaur rocket, which is struggling with a backlog of dozens of military missions. The crewed version? That's years away, probably not ready until the late 2020s. Here's the catch. Dream Chaser is awesome for cargo, but it can't replace Dragon's ability to carry astronauts and supplies anytime soon. If Dragon goes offline, Dream Chaser isn't ready to swoop in and save the day. So what about Russia's Soyuz? It's been around forever, and NASA already uses it as a backup through a deal with Roscosmos. This agreement, extended through 2027, allows NASA astronauts to fly aboard Soyuz missions, while Russian cosmonauts fly aboard American commercial crew vehicles, such as SpaceX's Crew Dragon. But leaning on Soyuz full-time? That's a tough pill to swallow. First, it's cramped. Only 3 seats, usually split between 2 Russians and 1 NASA astronaut. Compare that to Dragon's 7 seats, and you're looking at a skeleton crew on the ISS, slashing research time. Second, it's expensive. NASA paid up to $86 million per seat in the past, way more than Dragon's $55 to $88 million range. And let's not forget geopolitics. Relying on Russia, especially after tensions like those in 2022, feels like a step backward. Soyuz could keep NASA in the game, but it's a band-aid, not a solution. And with the ISS set to retire in 2030, every year counts. Speaking of 2030, the ISS is on borrowed time. NASA's got a plan to deorbit it safely into the Pacific Ocean. And guess who's building the vehicle for that? Yup, SpaceX. If Dragon or its deorbit variant gets axed, NASA's left scrambling for a new way to retire the ISS without risking an uncontrolled crash. Plus, the transition to private space stations, like Blue Origin's Orbital Reef, is still years off. No Dragon, no clear path forward. It's a mess. And let's not forget the bigger picture: Musk's influence. SpaceX has racked up over $20 billion in NASA contracts since 2008. From Dragon to Starship for the Artemis moon missions, Musk holds the keys to America's space ambitions. This feud with Trump, who's pushing a 25% NASA budget cut for 2026, shows how one tweet from Musk can send shockwaves through the space program. What about other players? Boeing's Starliner was supposed to be NASA's second crew option, but it flopped its 2024 test flight and is nowhere near ready. Northrop Grumman's Cygnus is great for cargo but can't carry people. More importantly, it's not reusable. Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket is launching, but they don't have a crewed spacecraft yet. The reality? NASA's got no quick fix if Dragon disappears. So, where does this leave us? Musk's backtrack on decommissioning Dragon buys NASA time, but this drama exposes a harsh truth. America's space program is heavily dependent on one company and one man. Sierra Space's Dream Chaser is a glimpse of the future, but it's not ready to save the day. Soyuz is a fallback, but it's costly and risky. With the ISS's clock ticking down to 2030, NASA needs to diversify its options fast. What do you think? Should NASA double down on Dream Chaser? Beg Musk to keep Dragon flying? Or maybe it's time for new players to step up? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button if you're hyped about space, and subscribe to TechMap for more updates on this cosmic drama. Anyway, decommissioning Dragon is just a matter of time. Because as Eric Berger, who's a veteran in the space industry, knows a lot about what's going on, and even knows Elon Musk fairly well, said, "This is not necessarily a bluff. Elon has been reluctant to take on new Dragon-related projects for a while now, and would like to move human missions to Starship as soon as possible. Of course, it would completely end ISS and impair future commercial space stations. Wild times." Elon Musk isn't just dreaming about space. He's building the highway to get us there. And at the center of that bold vision, SpaceX's Starship. Elon has said it countless times: Earth won't last forever. Whether it's climate change, nuclear war, or an asteroid, humanity needs a plan B. And what's plan B? Is Mars. Starship isn't just a rocket, it's the vehicle for survival. Designed to carry up to 150 metric tons to low Earth orbit, and up to 250 tons if they go all in and don't reuse it. This beast is built for big missions. To go interplanetary, Starship uses a clever refueling system in orbit, letting one ship fill up another before blasting off to the red planet. And get this, Musk wants to send 5 uncrewed Starships to Mars in 2026, with the first crewed missions as early as 2028. That's not sci-fi. That's SpaceX's working timeline. The first ship? It's got a name straight out of science fiction: Heart of Gold, a tribute to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Classic Musk. But Elon's thinking way bigger than a few missions. His long-term goal: a city on Mars. A real one. He's talked about 1 million people living there, with thousands of Starships making the journey back and forth, carrying everything from life support systems, to building materials, to families. First up, what sparked this whole mess? The drama kicked off in early June 2025, when Elon Musk, fresh off his 130-day stint as a special government employee leading the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE for short, publicly slammed a tax cut and spending bill backed by President Trump. Musk called it a disgusting abomination on X because it would balloon the national deficit. Trump didn't take it lightly. He fired back from the Oval Office, accusing Musk of going crazy and threatening to terminate billions in government contracts with Musk's companies, including SpaceX. The easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts. I was always surprised that Biden didn't do it, Trump posted on X. Now, of course, he's not only referring to SpaceX here, that could also impact Tesla. This wasn't just a war of words. It was a direct shot at Musk's empire. Now, let's talk about the bombshell that took this feud to orbit. Musk's threat to decommission SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft. On June 5, 2025, Musk posted on X, saying, "In light of the president's statement about cancellation of my government contracts, SpaceX will begin decommissioning its Dragon spacecraft immediately." Y'all, this was huge. The Dragon spacecraft, both Crew Dragon and Cargo Dragon, is NASA's lifeline to the International Space Station. It's the only U.S. spacecraft currently capable of ferrying astronauts to and from the ISS and returning significant cargo to Earth. Just in March 2025, Dragon rescued NASA astronauts Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore after Boeing's Starliner left them stranded for nearly 286 days. Musk's threat sent shockwaves through the space community. Eric Berger, a respected space journalist, emphasized it is wild times, and noted that Musk's long-standing reluctance to continue Dragon projects in favor of focusing on Starship, a next-generation vehicle intended for deep space missions like Mars colonization. This is not necessarily a bluff. Elon has been reluctant to take on new Dragon-related projects for a while now, and would like to move human missions to Starship as soon as possible. Of course, it would completely end ISS and impair future commercial space stations. Wild times. But here's where it gets spicy. Musk later backtracked. A few hours after his initial post, he responded to a user on X saying, "Okay, we won't decommission Dragon." So was this a bluff to call Trump's bluff, or a moment of cooler heads prevailing? Either way, the threat alone was enough to raise eyebrows, with some calling it reckless. Former NASA Deputy Administrator Lori Garver even said, "A rogue CEO threatening to decommission spacecraft, putting astronauts' lives at risk, is untenable." The stakes couldn't be higher. But the drama doesn't stop there. Musk escalated things to a whole new level when he dropped what he called a truth bomb on X. He wrote, "Time to drop the big truth bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That's the real reason they haven't been released. Have a great day, DJT." He even added, "Bookmark this post for the future. The truth will come out." Oh my goodness. This is next level. Whoa. This wasn't just a policy jab, it was a personal nuke. Musk had spent over $200 million backing Trump's re-election, so this accusation, tying Trump to the controversial Epstein case, was a betrayal felt around the world. Trump, who had initially been somewhat respectful, clapped back, saying, "Elon's getting tiresome. I asked him to leave. I pulled his EV mandate that forced everyone to buy electric cars nobody wants, and he knew I'd do that months ago. He just went nuts." The gloves are officially off. So, what does this mean for NASA and the U.S. space program? If Musk had followed through, it would have been a disaster. The Dragon spacecraft is critical to the ISS, which is a $100 billion orbiting lab involving dozens of countries. Without Dragon, NASA would have to lean on Russia's Soyuz spacecraft, which is less frequent and way more expensive since Russia's cut back production. This would cripple ISS operations, disrupt scientific research, and leave the U.S. without a reliable way to get astronauts to space from American soil. And get this, SpaceX is also contracted to build the U.S. deorbit vehicle to safely bring the ISS down in 2030. No Dragon, no deorbit plan, and that's a national security issue. But it's not just the ISS. SpaceX holds about $22 billion in government contracts, including $15 billion from NASA for Falcon 9 rockets and Starship, which is set to land astronauts on the moon for the Artemis program. If Trump cancels these contracts, it could derail NASA's Moon-to-Mars ambitions and hand a strategic advantage to competitors like China. Plus, the Pentagon relies on SpaceX for launching national security satellites, and building a spy satellite constellation. Analysts say SpaceX's dominance in the space industry might cushion it from some fallout, but losing these contracts would still sting. Big time. Now let's add some extra context to really understand this feud. This isn't just about a budget bill. Musk and Trump were once tight. Think Trump touring Tesla models at the White House and watching a Starship launch together in November 2024. But cracks started showing. For example, Trump's team pulled Jared Isaacman, Musk's pick for NASA administrator, from consideration, citing his past Democratic donations. Insiders say this was a shot at Musk, signaling his influence wasn't absolute. Plus, Musk's role in DOGE raised conflict of interest concerns, since he was overseeing cuts at agencies like NASA that fund his own company. Talk about a tricky spot. And let's not forget the bigger picture. Musk is pushing for a Mars-focused space agenda, which clashes with NASA's Artemis program and its moon-first approach. He's even suggested deorbiting the ISS sooner to free up resources for Mars. Trump's budget proposal already leaned toward SpaceX's priorities, cutting NASA's expensive space launch system in favor of Starship. But with this feud, those plans are up in the air. The Senate restored funding for SLS, which could limit SpaceX's gains if Trump doesn't fight for Musk's vision. So, where do we go from here? This feud is a high-stakes game of chicken. If Trump pushes to cancel SpaceX's contracts, it could disrupt NASA's operations for years. If Musk doubles down, he risks alienating a key partner in the government. But both sides have a lot to lose. SpaceX is too critical to U.S. space ambitions, and Trump needs Musk's innovation to push his bold space agenda. For now, cooler heads seem to have prevailed with Musk's retraction, but this drama is far from over. What do you think? Will they patch things up, or is this the start of a bigger battle? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Anyway, if you loved this deep dive, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell. We're aiming for 150,000 subscribers, and we need you to get there. Check out our other videos on Starship, Artemis, and more, and let's keep exploring the cosmos together. Okay, now let's take a breath. Forget the stress. Forget the chaos to welcome to the good news. Hey, space fans, it's Dragon's liftoff season again. Something truly exciting is happening on the launch pad, and it's something worth celebrating. SpaceX has just delivered its newest Crew Dragon spacecraft to the iconic Pad 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. That's right, the same launch pad that sent Apollo missions to the moon and continues to write space history today. This sleek new spacecraft, Crew Dragon C213, is fresh out of the hangar, brand spanking new, and hasn't even flown yet. But that's about to change very soon. Mark your calendars, June 10th. That's when Axiom 4, Axiom Space's fourth private astronaut mission to the International Space Station, is set to lift off aboard a Falcon 9 rocket. And yes, it's going to be big. Why is this such a big deal? Well, for starters, Crew Dragon C213 is the fifth and final Crew Dragon capsule SpaceX will ever build. The end of an era, folks. It's closing the book on production and turning the page to full-on operations. So this flight? It's historic from the get-go. Leading the Axiom 4 crew is none other than Peggy Whitson, the legendary NASA astronaut who now works with Axiom as their director of human spaceflight. She's logged 675 days in space, more than any other American. If you want someone at the helm of a groundbreaking mission, you want Peggy. She'll be joined by an international trio who are about to make history themselves. Shubhanshu Shukla from India will serve as pilot. Mission specialists Sławosz Uznański, a European Space Agency astronaut from Poland, and mission specialists Tibor Kapu from Hungary. None of these countries, India, Poland, and Hungary, has ever had one of their own live aboard the ISS before. So when Axiom 4 docks, it won't just be a mission. It'll be a milestone in space exploration. Once aboard the ISS, the team will spend 2 weeks conducting around 60 science experiments, pushing the boundaries of medicine, biology, physics, and tech in microgravity. After wrapping up their orbital research, they'll hop back into the Crew Dragon and make their return trip, eventually splashing down safely in the Pacific Ocean. For some quick context, Axiom Space's journey started with Axiom 1 in April 2022. SpaceX launched a 4-person crew on the mission that included a former NASA astronaut and 3 paying space flyers. The 4 space travelers aimed to distinguish themselves as much as possible from space tourists by performing experiments and research on the International Space Station. The mission was originally scheduled to last 10 days, but was extended to 17 days due to bad weather at the crew's splashdown site. It was followed by Axiom 2 in May 2023, with the crew consisted of 4 members: Peggy Whitson, former NASA astronaut and ISS commander, mission leader; John Schaffner, pilot; and 2 mission specialists from Saudi Arabia, Ali Al-Karni and Rayana Barnawi, the first Arab woman in space. The crew conducted scientific research, outreach, and commercial activities aboard the ISS over about 10 days, Axiom 3 in January. 2024 is notable as the first all-European commercial astronaut mission to the ISS. The crew includes Commander Michael Lopez Alegria, former NASA astronaut and Axiom 1 commander; pilot Walter Villaday; and mission specialists Alper Gezerovci, first Turkish astronaut, and Marcus Want, ESA-sponsored astronaut. The mission focused on pioneering scientific experiments in microgravity, including human health, medicine, cell biology, materials science, robotics, and AI, with an emphasis on enabling longer-duration human space missions and space habitability. SpaceX is preparing to debut its 5th and final Crew Dragon spacecraft on the Axiom Mission 4, a private astronaut trip to the International Space Station managed by Axiom Space. While it's the 4th such mission for Axiom, this flight also marks the final chapter for an important part of SpaceX's spacecraft manufacturing. Axiom 4 will fly aboard the newly built Crew Dragon capsule with tail number C213, billed by SpaceX as its 5th and final addition to the Dragon lineup. But this launch hasn't gone smoothly. Axiom Mission 4 has already been delayed, again this week. Originally targeting Tuesday, June 10th, poor weather pushed it to the following day, June 11th. Then came a more serious issue: a liquid oxygen leak on the Falcon 9's B1094 booster, discovered during a routine static fire test on Sunday. What's worse, this isn't the first time this specific issue has come up. The same booster experienced a liquid oxygen leak after landing during the Starlink 1210 mission in late April. William Gerstenmaier, SpaceX's VP of Build and Flight Reliability, admitted in a press briefing that the team either failed to properly fix the issue during refurbishment or missed it entirely. At Monday's teleconference, Gerstenmaier explained, "We've gone out to the launch pad. We're continuing to troubleshoot that. We should get that completed today and we will have that back in configuration." He added, "We're installing a purge that will essentially mitigate the leak, if it still continues, if we see it on launch day. So we will be fully ready to go fly." Gerstenmaier also noted a separate issue with the booster's Merlin engine, specifically a problem with thrust vector control on Engine 5, which required component replacements. But on Tuesday night, just before 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 0000 hours UTC, SpaceX announced that the launch would be scrubbed entirely to give teams more time to fix the liquid oxygen leak found during post-static fire checks. "Once complete and pending range availability, we will share a new launch date," they wrote. NASA's Dana Weigel, who oversees the ISS program, shared more insight into the mission's backup options. There's good news. Launch opportunities remain open through the end of June. That means a daily or rolling window strategy is in place. A smart move, especially when weather or technical issues pop up. If all June windows are missed, there's still a backup, a second opportunity in early to mid-July, around July 7th to 13th. But time is limited. After June 30th, a Russian Progress cargo vehicle is set to undock, opening a new port for future docking. The timing must be precise since Progress missions typically last about 6 months. and its departure clears the way for Axiom 4. However, this flexibility disappears around mid-July when the ISS enters a high solar beta period. During this time, the angle between the Sun and the ISS's orbit becomes too steep, over 60 degrees. That affects solar power generation and onboard temperature regulation, making station operations more complex. NASA typically halts launches during this period, a routine called a beta cutout, which can last 2 to 3 weeks. This scheduling challenge has existed since the days of the Space Shuttle. Still, SpaceX might expect to push hard for an earlier launch, probably this month. Astronauts don't enjoy extended quarantines, and everyone's eager to get this mission off the ground. Additionally, SpaceX is likely eager to see how the new Crew Dragon C213 performs in a real mission. This capsule features propulsion system upgrades specifically designed to make refurbishment easier and reduce corrosion caused by exposure to salty ocean water. According to William Gerstenmaier, this latest Dragon represents a meaningful evolution from previous models, with enhancements like improved storage compartments and more reliable, reusable propulsion systems. This isn't just the same Dragon capsule we've been flying. We've actually made some improvements and actually made it better to continue to keep flying safely, Gerstenmaier explained. All of these updates are part of a larger push to extend Dragon's reuse beyond the currently approved 5 missions per capsule. It's a strategy meant to cut costs and make spaceflight more sustainable by flying the same spacecraft multiple times. Operational data from SpaceX shows that each reuse cycle can reduce mission costs by about 30%. The challenge now is determining exactly when a Dragon can be cleared for more than 5 flights. There's no timeline or specific process locked in yet. It's still a developing plan. Think of it like beating a level in a video game, but having to wait for the next patch to unlock new content. Except, in this case, it's an actual spacecraft. Right now, Crew Dragon Endeavour has already flown 5 times, and several others have it 4 times. That puts mounting pressure on SpaceX to find a solution soon. Meanwhile, work on Axiom 4 continues. Gerstenmaier also mentioned that recovery teams are hard at work preparing for C213's splashdown in the Pacific Ocean. This is no small task, since SpaceX typically recovers capsules in the Gulf of Mexico near Florida. Landing in the Pacific is rare. They've only done it once before, during the Fram-2 mission. Anyway, if you love this deep dive, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell. We're aiming for 150,000 subscribers, and we need you to get there. It can be said that for SpaceX, Axiom 4, like every Dragon mission, centers on one core priority: crew safety. They're willing to delay an important flight, even at the risk of breaching contractual timelines, to ensure the mission goes forward only when it's absolutely safe. This approach stands in stark contrast to NASA and Boeing's decision during last year's Starliner crewed mission, where the launch proceeded despite an active helium leak. This safety-first mindset is deeply embedded in NASA's Commercial Crew Program, which SpaceX has been part of since Crew Dragon certification in 2020. The Commercial Crew Program requires all commercial providers to maintain a failure probability of less than 1 in 270 for crewed flights, a standard SpaceX has consistently met or exceeded. One key tool in SpaceX's safety arsenal is the static fire test, like the one conducted on Sunday, June 8, 2025, for Axiom 4's Falcon 9. During this test, the rocket's engines are fired while it's secured to the pad, simulating real launch conditions. This allows engineers to detect and correct problems in advance. In Axiom 4's case, the test revealed a liquid oxygen leak and a thrust vector control issue with Merlin Engine 5. SpaceX responded by installing a purge system to mitigate the leak and replacing faulty components, ensuring the rocket was once again flight ready. The importance of static fire tests is underscored by history. In April 2019, a Crew Dragon capsule exploded during such a test, prompting a redesign of the Super Draco abort thrusters to enhance future crew safety. In Axiom 4's case, the test worked exactly how they thought to find issues, as confirmed in a mission thread. This is all part of SpaceX's iterative testing philosophy, which emphasizes real-time data collection. The Axiom 4 static fire delivered telemetry on engine performance, fuel systems, and structural health, dramatically reducing launch risks. In fact, NASA's 2023 post-flight review of Crew 7 found a 15% improvement in anomaly detection, thanks in part to these kinds of pre-launch procedures. Another clear example of SpaceX's commitment to safety is how they handled Dragon C213. Initially slated to support the Crew 9 mission in 2024, C213 wasn't ready by the original target date. Rather than rush it, SpaceX calmly rescheduled its debut to early 2025 for Crew 10. NASA's subsequent decision to bring home the Starliner crew flight test astronauts aboard a SpaceX Dragon further emphasized the urgency and importance of C213's readiness. The spacecraft was now tasked with flying Crew 10 to the ISS before Crew 9, which included astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, could return to Earth aboard Dragon Freedom. However, with President Donald Trump's urgent call for a faster return of the former Starliner crew, Dragon C213 would not be ready for launch in February, one of the original windows to launch the Crew 10 mission. NASA and SpaceX decided to switch to using Dragon Endurance, tail number C2010, which was being readied to fly the Axiom 4 mission. During a Crew 10 pre-launch briefing, Gerstenmaier, Vice President of Build and Flight Reliability at SpaceX, said that there was a battery issue with Dragon C213, which took extensive work to address. We ended up pulling the battery out. We understand now exactly the failure of the slice that occurred on that battery, Gerstenmaier said in early March. It turns out the batteries are not easy to get out. It took a lot of capsule disassembly to get the battery out. In going through the final preparations for the AX-4 mission, Sarah Walker, Director of Dragon Mission Management, said during a mission overview briefing that some of the pre-launch checks raised a couple of issues that delayed the mission from May 29th to June 8th. One was a wire harness we needed to swap out. It didn't pass its standard pre-flight. It's called a HIPOT test. It stands for high potential, and it's a safety test that verifies the insulation strength of a device, Walker explained. And so, when a harness doesn't pass this check, we have to replace it with a new harness and rerun the test. And so, that cost us a few days. Walker said teams also discovered some moisture in the bag used to pack the parachutes. That added a few days to the launch timeline, to ship the next set off the line out to Florida to install instead. Looking ahead, SpaceX has been increasingly busy with its Dragon missions, both for crew and cargo flights. 2025 will be the third year in a row that they've launched 6 Dragon missions. While in previous years, those missions have been pretty evenly distributed throughout the calendar year, 2025 had a considerably ramped-up cadence in the first half of the year. This year, the timing needs of our customers drove us to plan the exact same mission count, 6 missions, in less than half the time, just barely over 5 months, starting with the Crew 10 launch in March, and concluding with a CRS-33 launch in August. Sarah Walker, Director of Dragon Mission Management, said. The team hasn't missed a beat. She noted that the Crew Resupply 33 mission will include a more technically elaborate trunk for the Dragon spacecraft, since it will be used to boost the space station and prove out some capabilities that will be incorporated onto the ISS deorbit vehicle, commissioned by NASA to bring the space station out of orbit around the end of the decade. This is truly an unprecedented time in human spaceflight for my team and for the Dragon program at SpaceX, Walker said. I feel super grateful to have been a small part of it, and I think what I've witnessed this year is seeing the team do what they do best, which is being thorough and methodical as they prepare for each and every launch, and Axiom 4 is no different. with tensions rising between Elon Musk and President Trump, culminating in Musk's threat to decommission SpaceX's Crew Dragon spacecraft. It's become more urgent than ever for NASA to expedite efforts to get Boeing's Starliner back on track. NASA's Commercial Crew program was designed with redundancy in mind. 2 different spacecraft from 2 different providers to ferry astronauts and supplies to the International Space Station. The idea is simple but critical. If one system encounters a widespread technical issue, the other can keep missions going. It's a strategic safeguard, especially when relying on a foreign partner like Russia is no longer an ideal fallback. But more than a decade ago, NASA made a costly misstep, heavily influenced by Boeing's lobbying power. The agency awarded Boeing a staggering $4.2 billion to develop the CST-100 Starliner, while SpaceX received just $2.6 billion for the Crew Dragon. That investment has not paid off. Starliner has been riddled with technical failures, culminating in a near-disastrous crewed test flight in 2024 that nearly cost 2 astronauts their lives. Meanwhile, Crew Dragon has proven its reliability, not only safely transporting astronauts to the ISS, but also breaking records and redefining what's possible in human spaceflight. Understandably, there's frustration within NASA. Billions in taxpayer money have been funneled into a project that continues to underperform, and the agency has little to show for it but criticism and regret. It's even more frustrating for taxpayers, people like us, watching our hard-earned dollars disappear into a project marred by mismanagement and questionable accountability. Despite these setbacks, NASA isn't giving up on Boeing just yet. The agency has tentatively slated Starliner's next attempt for early 2026, contingent on the successful resolution of its numerous technical issues and a full systems certification. If that happens, Starliner could finally serve as the backup NASA envisioned, and possibly take over if Musk follows through on his threat to retire Crew Dragon ahead of the ISS's 2030 retirement. Ironically, this isn't the first time they've set their sights on rebooting the Starliner. Back in March 2025, NASA and Boeing were aiming for a late 2025 launch for Starliner's first operational mission to the ISS. But the big problem then was their lack of full understanding of serious propulsion system anomalies the vehicle faced in orbit, issues they said wouldn't be resolved until sometime in 2025. Oh, that's not surprising at all. Starliner's been the mystery box of space for nearly a decade. At this point, being vague is probably part of their brand strategy. It's now mid-2025, and NASA still seems so lost in space that they might need Google Maps to find their way back. They have still not given a direct answer about what's really wrong with Starliner, or how they plan to fix it. Their most recent updates are just as non-committal as ever. The agency is still evaluating whether Starliner's next flight will be in a crew or cargo configuration, and the agency continues to review its forward plans and execute testing campaigns targeted throughout the spring and summer. Sound familiar? It should, because they said almost the same thing a few months ago. Anyone else getting déjà vu? Drop your thoughts in the comments. They add, NASA astronauts are training for a Starliner post-certification mission. That raises a question. Who are these brave souls? Who in their right mind would volunteer to ride in such a stupid spacecraft with such a troubled history? And how much will they be paid for their courage or recklessness? Let's not forget Butch Wilmore and Sunita Suni Williams, who were stuck on the ISS for 9 months last summer, only got a daily allowance of $4 to $5. Hopefully, the next crew gets something more for their risk. But here's the kicker. The agency has not yet assigned a full Starliner 1 crew for focused training. Maybe they haven't found an army as committed to martyrdom as the Japanese soldiers in World War II. Guess they're still waiting for the sequel. NASA says, "We will share more information about the next flight configuration, timing, and crew as work progresses toward certification of the Starliner for regular crew rotation flights." Translation: Don't dream I'll have results soon. I'm not a magician, just a procrastinator in disguise. So grab some popcorn, folks. There are sure to be more twists ahead. Anyway, if you loved this deep dive, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell. We're aiming for 150,000 subscribers, and we need you to get there. Alright, now let's take a wild guess together. When will the CST-100 Starliner actually launch again? 2026? 2027? Honestly, at this point it might be better if it never flies again. It's just too expensive, and let's be real. Starliner hasn't exactly won any popularity contests. But instead of just ranting, let's break this down with a simple comparison. Back in 2020, NASA wasn't too happy about paying Roscosmos $90.3 million for astronaut Kate Rubin's ride to the ISS. So, how much did NASA pay for a seat on Boeing's Starliner? In 2019, the Inspector General reported that the cost per seat was about $90 million. Wait, what? That's basically the same cost. Where's the cost efficiency that the Commercial Crew Program was supposed to be all about? Now compare that to SpaceX's Crew Dragon, which costs about $55 million per seat. Even with price increases due to extended contracts, it's still significantly cheaper than Starliner. But it's not just NASA or taxpayers feeling the pinch. Boeing, the very company behind Starliner, has taken a financial beating. They've poured billions into the project and have already recorded over $2 billion in losses. In 2024 alone, they took a $523 million hit, the biggest one-year loss tied to Starliner so far. Why? Repeated delays and persistent technical issues. One major headache? The thrusters. During the first crewed flight test, some thrusters malfunctioned because a tiny Teflon component overheated and swelled, blocking oxidizer flow. Without that oxidizer, the thrusters couldn't do their job. And the company behind those thrusters? Aerojet Rocketdyne. That's the same Aerojet Rocketdyne responsible for refurbishing NASA's RS-25 engines, charging us taxpayers a whopping $4.4 billion to refurbish just 16 of them. No wonder they're on the Inspector General's and Government Accountability Office's radar for high costs and questionable management. Meanwhile, SpaceX and even Blue Origin are developing new, reusable Methalox engines, methane and oxygen, which are way cheaper, about 1/25 the cost of refurbishing RS-25s. That's a massive difference. And let's not forget SpaceX's biggest advantage, vertical integration. They design and build nearly every part of their rockets, from engines and electronics to flight computers, and even their own spacesuits. Plus, they launch from their own private site, Starbase, Texas. This full-stack control means lower costs, faster upgrades, and better innovation. Now let's talk about reliability. Since 2020, Crew Dragon has flown multiple successful missions, showing off cutting-edge tech like touchscreens and autonomous docking. Starliner, on the other hand, still hasn't completed a single crewed mission without major hiccups. It was designed with lots of manual overrides and redundancies, but it's yet to prove itself where it counts. So if NASA is thinking about replacing Crew Dragon with Starliner in the final days of the ISS, well, let's just say that wouldn't make much sense. Last but certainly not least, even the direct user, astronauts, also prefer SpaceX's spacecraft. Axiom 2 Commander Peggy Whitson, a former NASA astronaut and veteran of 4 space flights, just after splashdown said, "SpaceX, we would like to tell you that was a phenomenal ride. We really enjoyed all of it." Every story comes to an end, and this is only the beginning of a new era for our country and our region. Rayana Barnawi, who joined with Whitson, added, "So I'd just like to thank everyone here who has helped us," she added, fighting back tears. NASA's astronaut Bob Behnken, who rode on Dragon in May 2020, shared, "Dragon was huffing and puffing all the way into orbit," he said. "We were definitely driving or riding a Dragon all the way up. Unlike the Space Shuttle, which had a powerful yet controlled ascent, Crew Dragon felt like a living machine, vibrating, rumbling, and surging forward with raw power. Hurley described stage separation as something out of a movie, evoking memories of Apollo 13. When the first stage engine shut down, the crew was thrust from experiencing 3 times Earth's gravity to complete weightlessness, a fleeting, surreal moment, before the vacuum engine roared to life, propelling them into another wave of intense acceleration. Doug Hurley couldn't hide his excitement as he looked back on what Dragon had already accomplished. A truly historic leap forward.
We have to give credit to SpaceX, the Commercial Crew Program, and of course NASA. It's great to get the United States back in the crewed launch business, and we're just really glad to be on board this magnificent complex.
In addition to the 2 American astronauts, 58-year-old Japanese astronaut Soichi Noguchi also had the good fortune to be one of the first people to ride on this spacecraft. He is the first person to fly on SpaceX's Crew Dragon for NASA's inaugural Crew 1 mission. The Dragon is the best. I feel Dragon is really ready to go up. It's really fun to ride, and 2 days in, Dragon is really remarkable memories. The Crew Dragon is made up of 2 key components: the capsule and the trunk. Let's start with the capsule. Right at its nose cone, there's a mechanical hatch that plays a dual role. It can either reveal a docking port or a cupola window, depending on what the mission calls for. And that sleek white paint on the exterior? It's not just for looks. It's a special coating called Z93C55, engineered to shield the spacecraft from the harsh conditions of space. Now let's talk propulsion. The Dragon is equipped with 2 types of engines tailored for different tasks. Scattered around the capsule are the Draco thrusters, 16 of them in total. These small but mighty engines use hypergolic propellant, a pair of chemicals that ignite on contact, providing precise maneuverability in orbit. But for high-stakes moments, like an emergency abort, the capsule relies on the Super Draco engines. These beasts are tucked inside the capsule's noticeable side ridges and pack a punch, delivering 200 times more thrust than the regular Dracos. If anything goes wrong during launch, the Super Dracos fire up to pull the capsule and its crew safely away from danger. Moving to the trunk, this 12-foot-tall module acts as a connector between the capsule and the Falcon 9's second stage. It's not just a hollow shell, it's packed with essential systems. You'll find solar panels generating power, a radiator keeping the spacecraft cool, and aerodynamic fins for stability in case of an emergency abort during launch. The exterior design is undeniably futuristic. Sleek, minimalistic, and just what you'd expect from a spaceship built for the 21st century. But here's the real kicker. What about the inside? Spoiler alert, it's just as jaw-dropping. Step inside and you'll instantly feel the difference. Compared to Russia's Soyuz spacecraft, the contrast is like flying economy versus business class. And ironically, Crew Dragon's business class comes at a fraction of the cost. The capsule stands at 16 feet tall and 13 feet wide, offering 9.3 cubic meters of pressurized, livable space. It's designed to comfortably support 4 astronauts, though SpaceX says it can handle up to 7. And under each seat, 3 cargo compartments where astronauts can stash their gear, or a few space snacks for the ride. There's an old African proverb that goes, "When elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers." It means that when powerful forces clash, it's the ordinary folks who feel the pain. And right now, that proverb perfectly captures what's happening between Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and NASA. Recently, Elon Musk made waves by threatening to halt operations of the Dragon spacecraft. Yes, the very one that ferries astronauts to the International Space Station. With SpaceX's $22 billion government contracts at stake, both the Pentagon and NASA are rattled. The White House, understandably, is deeply concerned. What once seemed like a comical spat between Musk and Trump has escalated into something far more serious. To be fair, NASA saw this coming. For years, they've been wary of leaning too heavily on any single provider. That's why they've consistently pushed for diversity in their partnerships, to ensure smooth operations even if one partner stumbles. It's also why Boeing's Starliner is still in the game, despite all its setbacks and underperformance. But here's the problem. NASA has allowed Boeing too much leeway for too long. Over the past decade, the lax oversight has let issues fester, snowballing into a nearly unmanageable situation. The original plan for redundancy? It's crumbling. Right now, SpaceX is NASA's only reliable ticket to the ISS. If something goes wrong with SpaceX, America might find itself in the embarrassing position of asking Russia, yes, Roscosmos, for a ride to space. That would be a huge geopolitical setback for a country that's spent decades trying to distance itself from Russian reliance in space. But Russia isn't the real threat anymore. China is. They're moving full steam ahead with their manned lunar mission, aiming to land astronauts on the moon by 2030. That's why Trump, during his administration, shifted NASA's priorities toward outpacing China in space. Given the ongoing context, it's likely he'll continue to push hard for the accelerated development of alternative spacecraft and launch systems. That said, there's been a recent shift. Musk deleted his provocative post and appears to be softening his stance. While Trump hasn't exactly welcomed him back with open arms, tensions seem to be cooling. What was once an explosive feud is now in a slow containment phase. Experts believe the bromance between Trump and Musk is over for good, but eventually a truce will be necessary. This is bigger than personal drama. It's about national security. Let's not forget, SpaceX is still a cornerstone of America's space ambitions. Dragon is the only operational crew vehicle to the ISS, and the only spacecraft selected to safely deorbit the station when the time comes. And the Artemis program? It desperately needs the affordable, powerful Starship rocket. Without it, NASA risks being bogged down by bloated legacy systems like Orion and SLS. And then there's the human side, astronauts themselves. They've been flying on Dragon for 5 years now, and they love it. Sleek, reliable, and modern. It simply works. Compared to the traditional capsule, there's no question. SpaceX's Dragon offers a far more comfortable ride. With a roomy 9.3 cubic meters of cabin space, it's designed to comfortably house 4 astronauts, giving them actual room to move around. The interior has often been described as quietly luxurious, featuring a sleek black and white minimalist design, high-grade carbon fiber finishes, and seats wrapped in Alcantara fabric, a material usually reserved for luxury cars. Now, contrast that with the Soyuz. It's a spacecraft that's infamous for its cramped interior, barely 4 cubic meters of space shared by 3 astronauts, often packed in like sardines. NASA astronaut Don Pettit once shared how, once strapped in, his heels almost touched his buttocks. He was restrained at 8 different points, leaving only his hands, head, and toes free to move. Some astronauts have described it as a space prison, or worse, a medieval torture chamber. This narrow design necessitates that Soyuz astronauts have to be real jack-of-all-trades, handling a wide range of scientific, technical, and survival tasks during long missions. But that tight space isn't for nothing. Soyuz's compact design is meant to protect astronauts from serious injuries during a hard landing on the Kazakh steppe. The smaller space helps keep internal organs from shifting dangerously during high G-forces. Now look at the Space Shuttle. While Soyuz offered just 4 cubic meters of livable space, the shuttle boasted a massive 65.8 cubic meters. That meant more freedom to move around, bigger crews, and a generally more comfortable experience for long-term missions. When it comes to tech, Crew Dragon is leagues ahead. Gone are the endless buttons and levers, replaced by sleek touchscreen controls and a futuristic interface that feels straight out of a sci-fi movie. It's highly automated too. Ground control can handle most issues, and astronauts only need to take manual control when absolutely necessary. Even the spacesuits are integrated into the system, automatically adjusting cooling and airflow on the fly. Compare that to the Soyuz, which still uses old-school switches and analog dials. And even the Space Shuttle, advanced for its time, had a dizzying maze of buttons and switches that required intense training to master. Then there's Boeing's Starliner. Like Dragon, it's a private, reusable spacecraft with touchscreen controls and an autonomous docking system. But there's a catch: Starliner is far more expensive. Each seat costs about $90 million, mostly because it's launched on ULA's expendable Atlas V rocket. Dragon, on the other hand, rides the partially reusable Falcon 9, bringing costs down to about $55 million per seat. What really matters to astronauts, though, is safety and reliability, and Dragon delivers. With over 10 crewed NASA missions and a number of bold private endeavors under its belt, Crew Dragon has a proven track record of getting the job done safely and efficiently. Starliner? Not so much. It still hasn't been certified for manned flights. Its development has been bogged down by delays and technical mishaps. Its first crewed test flight even experienced issues that made it unsafe to return. NASA is still working to get it certified, but with the ISS approaching retirement, time is running out. Unless Starliner can prove itself quickly, its window of opportunity may be closing. Some astronauts may trust Boeing's legacy, but few will feel fully confident until the spacecraft earns that trust through consistent, safe flights. Meanwhile, NASA and the Pentagon are in early talks with other companies like Rocket Lab, Stoke Space, and Blue Origin. According to sources, these discussions are very active, but any actual replacement is still considered a long way off. Rocket Lab is working on the Neutron, a reusable medium-lift rocket. Stoke Space is building the Nova, aiming for full reusability. But realistically, both are years away from challenging SpaceX's lead. Blue Origin may be a more plausible contender. Their New Glenn rocket is prepping for its second flight, but there's still no plan for a human-rated orbital spacecraft. And then there's Sierra Space's Dream Chaser, a sleek spaceplane-style vehicle. It's an exciting concept, but only the cargo version, named Tenacity, is close to launch. The crewed version? Still in development. So for now, Crew Dragon remains the gold standard, combining cutting-edge tech, lower costs, and a proven safety record. Until a new challenger truly rises, SpaceX continues to set the bar for human spaceflight in the 21st century. For short, some astronauts may accept the change out of duty, but it's hard to imagine them preferring an alternative at this stage. And in the future, how American astronauts will fly into space without SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft remains a question. So what's your take? Do you think Dragon would be quickly replaced? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, if you love this deep dive, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell. We're aiming for 150,000 subscribers, and we need you to get there. Check out our other videos on Starship, Artemis, and more, and let's keep exploring the cosmos together. We know that inevitably Dragon will be phased out and replaced by SpaceX's next-generation spacecraft, Starship. When that time comes, the door will be open for other companies to step in with their own innovations and potentially take over the reputation Dragon once held. But here's the real question. What lessons can they take from Dragon's legacy to achieve that level of success? Building Crew Dragon wasn't just about hardware. It was about assembling the right team. SpaceX brought together a powerhouse group of engineers, software developers, and designers, all working closely with NASA and astronauts who would eventually fly in the spacecraft. This collaborative approach was key to making Dragon not just functional, but truly human-centered. At the heart of the design effort were key figures like John Federspiel, the chief engineer, who played a crucial role in developing Dragon's modern interface and its iconic touchscreen control system. Garrett Reisman, a former NASA astronaut and SpaceX's director of space operations, provided real-world insights from his time in orbit, vital experience that helped shape Dragon into a truly human-rated vehicle. And Shane Mielke, the lead UI/UX designer, teamed up with software engineers, mission operators, and even astronauts to craft an interface that's not only sleek but also intuitive and easy to use in high-stress conditions. And speaking of astronauts, their feedback was absolutely essential. NASA astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken, who flew Dragon's first crewed mission, played a hands-on role in refining the spacecraft's design. Their real-world input ensured the final product wasn't just designed for astronauts, it was designed with them. NASA, meanwhile, held the critical role of evaluating and certifying the final product. Through the Commercial Crew Program, NASA partnered with SpaceX in a groundbreaking way, offering support, funding, and technical guidance from concept to launch. That collaboration wasn't just helpful, it was the foundation on which Crew Dragon was built. Last but certainly not least, cost is a big factor in making Dragon a viable option for NASA. SpaceX has made significant advances in reusable rocket technology, which has dramatically reduced launch costs and expanded access to space. This cost reduction could be a key factor in making Dragon and SpaceX's launch services attractive to government agencies like NASA and the Pentagon.